Gentlemen, many thanks for making time to speak to us. Let me start with you, Wynand. Just give me a sense of how much pressure a business is actually under in this day and age, this information age. How much pressure are many businesses under when it comes to a cyber attack, or is it something that's actually passable?
So I think to maybe start off, one, we need to move on from calling it a defensive strategy, but rather consider a resilient strategy. Because a defensive strategy doesn't work. We'd like to think that there is no silver bullet solution out there that's going to prevent an attack, but it's more to do with what will I be able to do before, during, and after an attack. And to that point, every business is taking it as a super high priority at this point in time to considering that information is any organization's biggest asset at this point in time.
I know what's at stake here. If someone is actually to look at the numbers that many of the specialists do put out there, what's at stake here? What's the risk of not complying?
Well, so there's, so there's risk for the individual. We must just make sure this is very relevant only for individual people out there as well as businesses. And if we look at, there's an estimation of 2.2 billion that it costed us in South Africa over the last year. And people don't realize, not individuals or businesses, how big the risk actually is that you run. Because these cyber crimes and hackers can bring your business to a halt, ask you ransom money to decrypt or open up encrypted files again, with the data of your company that just can't go on. There's the client information that you need to protect, and where there's also regulation that forces you as a business to have certain things in place to protect client information, ID numbers, banking details, and so on. And businesses are just blasé, it's actually mind-boggling. And I think the reason for that is because we don't understand the risk that we really run.
Wynand, he's going on about ignorance, but the World Economic Forum just made it very clear that when it comes to global risks to businesses, actually cybersecurity is number 5, quite shockingly. If we're to look at the example of traditional companies that are still brick and mortar, going on about the same things, paper here, paper there, do you get the sense that they actually grasp how intense and how serious this actually is today?
I think certainly there's a trend of where businesses are starting to take it serious. I do believe that due to the nature of many businesses' core function, they do believe they're not going to be susceptible to these type of attacks or not being targeted, which is definitely not the case. I think everybody is at one point in their existence will become victim. I think the biggest element with these organizations is that the biggest contributor to these cyber attacks is actually not your technology or the type of business, but it's the actual end user that is mostly targeted and that leads to obviously further breaches or attacks. So in our experience, from a Mimecast perspective, we found in excess of 91% of cyber attacks is due to human error.
Human error, but there are reports from the States that do show that there's actually state-sponsored attacks. There's some usual suspects here, North Korea being one of them. Of course, none of these are confirmed. Not that His Excellency Kim would actually come for me, but there's state-sponsored attacks. And Heino, I just want you to actually touch on this. Are businesses actually susceptible to state attacks in South Africa?
Well, what I can say is, looking at what you can do, and I just want to touch on what Heino said earlier, is you can take preventative measures, and then after the fact also things that you can do. But the most important is, bigger companies like King Price, for example, we have a whole department looking at the cyber insurance. And we make also use of Mimecast to come and put everything in place as far as you can. But then, I'm also looking from a perspective of making sure that when something like this happens, you've got the necessary in place to protect yourself. And that will be insurance, cyber insurance, that doesn't cost a lot. even smaller businesses can insure yourself for such a small amount, and you can get up to 3, 4, 5 million cover. That will cover you for the legal people that can talk to these hackers, you know, when you extorted, professional people that can come into the business and drill into your systems. Focus on that while you can focus still on keeping your eye on the business and let that go. Because if you don't have that in place, you know, you find yourself in turmoil. There's even included in these insurance is, you know, your loss of income in a time of this. And businesses should know it. If you've got this in place, cyber insurance is not something to fear, because there are companies like Mimecast that can come in and help you out and focus on that while you continue your business.
Gentlemen, before I let you go, two things. One is the prevalence of cloud technologies, you know, and this is actually something that they have in their brochure, you know, better security and that kind of thing. The second is the uptake of insurance, cyber insurance. These are two things that I want you guys to touch before you go. One is cloud technologies and how it can actually help counter the risk. The other is when it comes to all this talk of insurance, how is the uptake? Do businesses actually understand?
So maybe I'll start off with touching on the cloud component. And definitely cloud has been what I'd like to refer to as an enabling technology that in essence help customers build a cyber resilience strategy. So if we look at cyber resilience strategy, it's about everything you do before, so the security systems that you put into place to protect your organization and your users, which generally is a multi-layered security approach. As an organization, you can't afford to do that yourself. You need, you know, things that come in terms of economies of scale. Secondly, is the durability to continue to function and operate during an attack. And that resilience, you can't create yourself, so the redundancy, etc., because it's going to cost a lot of money. And then last but not least, the recoverability. So after the attack, how do I get back into a state of being able to operate and function as a business again? And obviously the speed at which you can do that obviously determines the impact to the business at the end of the day. So cloud is most definitely enabling technology in that sense.
Right.
So on the other side, you know, if you have your insurance in place, we've seen a much bigger uptake. And I think it's because, you know, there are world cybersecurity days like this, and there's more, you know, there's people realize more what's happening, listen what's happening to other businesses. It's a pity that you have many clients that first suffer some or another attack before they come and they search for the insurance. But the word is out there, people are realizing the exposure, and therefore we see an increase in the uptake. And it's important, you know, you've got all that covered in a moment like that when you are extorted, or your business can go on, you've got that loss of income cover that you can put in place, and it's really at a low cost compared to the risk that you run.
Gentlemen, many thanks for making time to speak to us, and happy Safer Internet Day.